Oh. Rob starts vanishing because he's a hand. Okay, so the way this is going to work for those of you who were here last week, it'll be very similar. Those of you who weren't, I will explain it. I'll start off just asking Rob and Kate a couple of questions after I do an introduction of them in a second. And after, 10 or 15 minutes of that, we'll open it up to you all to ask questions. What seemed to work last time is if you just kind of raise your hand somewhere in the screen, I'll see it and call on you. Would ask that people do please mute themselves if you're not actively speaking, so that we can give our guests of honor the most attention possible. So without any further ado, I will read this lovely introduction that I wrote for both of these two talented and amazing people, and they approved about an hour ago. So Kate and Rob Lott, both performers in the Orlando area, primarily based out of Walt Disney World, but also working elsewhere. For more than 10 years, Kate has sung first soprano with the renowned Voices of Liberty a cappella group in Epcot's American Adventure Pavilion. As a soloist, she's performed the national anthem for audiences including the Atlanta Braves, Run Disney race competitors, and President Barack Obama. Prior to joining the Walt Disney Company, Kate performed in regional theaters across the country. Outside of the Disney family, Kate is a member of the a cappella group Voctave, which has released 6 albums and tours across the country. For more on Voctave, please visit Voctave.com. I have been listening to a lot of Voctave during this quarantine. I am not going to lie. It's kind of hitting me right where I need to be hit right now. Rob Lott has been a performer at Walt Disney World for nearly 20 years. Makes his regular home at the Hoop Dee Doo Musical Revue Dinner Theater performance at Disney's Fort Wilderness Campground, putting his comic chops to work every night as 6 Bits Slocum. He also regularly performs as a member of the Dapper Dans Barbershop Quartet on Main Street, USA, and in the leading role of Marlin in Finding Nemo the Musical, where his expertise in puppetry has made him a valued asset. Outside of Disney, he also performs at SeaWorld and regularly directs in the Orlando theater community, and he is also the host of the podcast, The Leading Creative Podcast, which I highly recommend. I would like to very deeply thank Kate and Rob for joining us today. They are incredibly talented performers, incredibly kind and generous people, and I am just thrilled to share them with you. So Rob and Kate, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
So I will just sort of launch in with a first question, and the two of you can decide who wants to answer first. Pretty straightforward. What were your paths to becoming Orlando-based performers?
I went to college. I went to Shenandoah University. I studied musical theater there, and I moved to New York. I lived there for about 9 months, and I literally went to every single Disney audition because I knew maybe it might not be for the long run, but I knew at some point I loved Disney growing up. I'd been there a handful of times as a kid. I thought, this might be really cool. And there was one place that I was like, oh my gosh, there's a place I could work. There's a place I could be. And I actually overheard it at a Disney audition going, they asked for a high E in this song. And so maybe I should change my song. Just like overhearing in the audition room. Like, okay, I'm going to change my audition song. And so I auditioned about 7 times for Disney, and I got called back. I actually got called back on spring break during my spring break audition time, but I couldn't go because I had to be back at school. But then living in New York, they invited me to the callback, and I went, and then the rest is history. I moved down.
What was your audition song? Do you remember?
Vanilla Ice Cream.
Classic.
Perfect.
Classic. Yeah.
Nice. Rob?
Yeah, so I am of a rare breed, but knowing the audience that's listening in today, I imagine some of you will be able to identify with this. But I'm of a rare breed of people who have just always known what I wanted to do. I always knew that I wanted to work in show business in some way, shape, or form. I knew and that live theater was specifically what I wanted to do. And so I just went to work as a kid, just jumping at every opportunity to do that at school and at church, and just any opportunity to step on stage, I would jump at it. Any opportunity to be involved. So I would run spotlight and run sound and help with props and sets, as well as jump on stage wherever I was needed. And so just kind of learning all of those aspects growing up. And I was all set and ready to go to the Ohio State University. I was going to study music. But instead, a friend of mine who I had been working with over the summer, prior to going to school, prior to going to Ohio State, they said that there was going to be an audition in Orlando to perform, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm not. I already have a plan, but to go to Ohio State, but at the same time, maybe this might lead somewhere, and I might be able to do a couple of years of performing and just having a go at that professionally. And so I went to an audition in September, and I was offered a job, and I started in October, all with the intention of, we'll see how long this lasts. Well, almost 20 years later, I'm still here, still doing shows and helping out wherever I can.
So for both of you, what makes Orlando an appealing home market for you?
I often say, especially when I'm talking to young up and coming performers, people who want to do what we're doing, for so many, Broadway is held up as kind of the end, the final place to perform with excellence. And I don't disagree that Broadway is a great place to do that. And at the same time, while I've never performed on Broadway, I know a number of people who have, and they come back and they say, theater and Broadway, it's just kind of bigger budgets. And all of the same issues that you have on stage, honestly, in community theater, it's all the same stuff happening in community theater as it is happening on Broadway stages. People are coming with educations and experience and all of that. But if the goal is to work on Broadway, then of course there's only one place that you can do that. But if the goal is to be a working performer, to be a working artist, a working actor, a working musician, you name it, if the goal is to be a working artist, a working one of those, then there's any number of places that you can do that, all around the country and beyond. So I always point to Orlando just for opportunity. There's just so much opportunity here to work. Not so much right now, as we are free and available at 4:30 our time on a Tuesday afternoon. But yeah, there's just so much opportunity. There's so much live stage opportunity. Also, then for me, the community that we found here, very few people are from Orlando. Very few people are from Florida that work and do what we do. We're all from different places, but we found our home and we found our family here because of the community that is here. So we celebrate the same way that, at the end of a rehearsal with a cast, you would celebrate somebody's birthday. Well, that's absolutely true with us. We just do it all year round. And the show doesn't stop. The rehearsals don't stop. The show keeps going. And so you spend holidays with each other. You spend birthdays with each other. You celebrate happiness and you mourn sadness with each other. And so we have our family here. So I would also say community. That was a lot of talking.
I actually, I literally was moving down here to get my equity card and move back to New York. That obviously didn't pan out the way I intended it to, because it ended up being a really great place to work. And where can you say you have a year's worth of work guaranteed? We only are on year contracts through Actors Equity, but I just literally, before all of this happened, I signed a new contract. So I have a contract for a whole nother year, and to be guaranteed that I will be performing for an entire year is huge. I lived in New York for about 9 months, and the only time I ever sang was at auditions, or like the crazy person warming up on the street. It made me really sad. So living here, being able to do the thing that you love for an audience that's super excited to see you, building that family, it's really important. I had a handful of friends that I encouraged to move down here from New York that were my roommates in New York and friends from college, and they have found the exact same thing we found, is that this has really become our home. And we really enjoy it.
Yeah. One of the things that I always think is interesting about performing in an environment like a theme park or like Disney, for both of you, you do multiple shows a day. multiple Voices of Liberty performances, multiple hoops. What is it like to sort of reset the show fresh so many times a day?
There are a bunch of tricks that we have and that we share as theme park performers. I do twofold. The first one is every day is somebody's first time to experience the parks. And so with that, they don't know and they don't care that it is literally my 437th time this year doing this show. They don't care. They don't know about that, nor should they. But it is their first time to experience the parks. And with that, that means that we should give them all of the hype that they've been experiencing that they've looked forward to. The other thing though, for me too, that makes it just a little bit further takes it a little further is that it's not just somebody's first time experiencing the parks at Walt Disney World. Although that is great, it is potentially somebody's very first time experiencing live theater, live performance. And we have an opportunity to open people's minds, open people's eyes, open people's ears, and open people's hearts to live performance and this thing that we love so much. We have an opportunity to share that with people and hopefully maybe potentially ignite that same passion in them based on what they saw with us. So for me, it's not just them coming and seeing Hoop Dee Doo Revue for the very first time, it's that they're experiencing live theater for the first time. And that's important. That's a huge responsibility to keep it fresh.
It's huge to keep it fresh. It's hard. There's going to be times that you don't feel like being at work, or you don't, for me, I don't feel like putting on a corset dress today, but you put it on and you go out there, and sometimes it's like faking it till you make it. For me, the hardest transition into doing so many shows was the stamina. I'm used to like an arc of like a concert or an arc of a show. This is 15 minutes, 30 minutes off, 15 minutes, 30 minutes off. So it was doing that kind of thing was very odd to get used to. It's a different kind of stamina, but once you build it up, it gets really easy. It's almost like, oh, the show's over already.
We did it.
It's over already. Oh,
one more thing on that, and I don't put any pressure on the audience to act a certain way. I don't put any pressure on the audience to give me anything. And at the same time, without them knowing it, just looking out into the front row and seeing somebody who has that, like I said earlier, they have that that expression on their face of, I've heard of this happening. I've heard of people actually singing and dancing live on stage. I've never seen it in person. And now the show becomes for them, for that individual. And so doing the same show over and over and over again, you're also doing the same show over and over and over again for a brand new audience, audience that changes. Yeah. So automatically they bring a new energy that makes you change and I have to listen to them. I'm not the first to say this, and I won't be the last, but our cast on stage, we have 6 people on stage and we have 2 musicians. So we have 6, 7, 8, plus technicians. We have a spot operator, 9. We have an audio guy, 10, and we have a backstage tech. So 11. We have 11 people that make our show happen, plus a stage manager. So I then refer to the audience as being, what number are we at now? 12, the 12th member, the 13th member of the cast, and the fact that we have to wait and let them finish applauding, or maybe they didn't applaud or laugh when we thought that they would. So that means we're just going to move some things along.
I think one of the things that's I've always found unusual about performance in your venues is, I guess maybe with the exception of Finding Nemo, there's such a close relationship between the performer and the audience. You are super aware of those audience members, whether it's in the rotunda at the American Adventure and they're sitting 6 feet from you, or it's on Main Street and they're standing 2 feet from you, or at Hoop Dee Doo and you're running through the house while people are eating dinner. How have you as performers had to adjust to being so not divided from the spectator?
It was really weird at first because I'm used to, yes, you could see some people in the house, but the house was dark, and it's very vulnerable. It's very vulnerable, especially with some of the stuff that I have to put out there on a daily basis. But it's actually the best part. Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, at first you're like, oh, these people are staring at me, and they're literally, like, I've literally had little kids crawl up next to me and look under my skirt to see how it's being held open. I mean, that's how intimate it is. But that's really the best part. You can see people reacting. You can see people crying. You can see people laughing. You can see people going through their family memories of the time that they came with their family. It's great.
You may not be able to tell. My wife, Kate, is just a little choked up right now thinking about it.
Yeah, we miss it. We really do miss it.
We do. Yeah, we've been away now from it she's going to step away and clean herself up a little bit. We've been away for about a month now. And yeah, you know, it's something that if a year ago somebody had said, hey, in next spring of 2020, you guys are going to get to have a month off paid vacation. We would think, oh my goodness, that's going to be amazing. It's not amazing.
It isn't.
We miss it a lot. And I think, granted, we weren't able to plan for this, but that's neither here nor there. What the thing that I was going to say in terms of your question, Tom, is how, I think just the willingness, the willingness to yes and with your audience, to improvise with your audience, not just the members of not just your cast. Of course, we have that with each other. There's a lot of elements of improvisation in our show, but the audience is that was the biggest learning for me, was having a willingness to improvise with people who don't know how to improvise. And they aren't necessarily, they don't think of it as improvisation, what they're doing, but we brought them into our world. And we we want them to become a part of it, to join us on that. And so helping get somebody to that place of them suspending their disbelief for a little bit and joining us on this ride, that was a giant learning.
Kate, I spent the 15 minutes before this started literally watching Voices of Liberty videos on YouTube. So like, I feel you. And I am tempted right now, and will not succumb to temptation as someone who is actively researching and writing about things that both of you do, particularly the Voices of Liberty and Dapper Dans. I'm not going to keep firing questions at you, because that would be exploiting this for my own selfish gains, but would rather open it up to the students and see what questions you all would like to ask our guests. So if you have all right. Mackenzie, go ahead, start us off. Make sure to unmute.
Hi, okay, so I have a lot of questions, so like if we need to like me ask one and then like go away, that'd be fine.
Let's do that, yeah.
Great. I'm a senior, so I'm like, what am I doing? So theme parks is definitely something I want to do. I've done a little bit of, and I actually have a video audition for Disney that I'm sending in, like I'm filming it tomorrow. And like with video auditions right now is like the time that's happening. How do you go big or go home with theme park auditions? Because it's all about the energy and everything on video that's this far away. Like, do you guys have any advice on that, or like how do you go about that?
I feel like one of the biggest things I learned, whether it's video or in the room for Disney specifically, is just show them who you are.
Honestly, it's so that
yes,
it sounds
they need
cliche.
To know you can sing. They need to know you can act, or whatever audition you're doing, whatever piece you're doing, they need to know that you can do it, but to show your personality. So don't be afraid to like slate it as if you were meeting people and say, hi, I'm Mackenzie, and this is what I'm going to be singing today. Thank you so much for this opportunity, or whatever you choose to say personally, but show them who you are. 95% I think of Disney auditions are people going, how long would I want to spend in a break room with this person?
We mentioned earlier that we're on year-long contracts. And so when the casting directors, when they are looking to cast a show, they know they're not just casting for the stage, they're casting for the green room as well. So if you can show yourself, show your personality, be a likable person, it's not necessarily a matter of going big or going home in terms of the video audition. It really is a matter of showing your personality, who you truly are. If that fills up the screen, great, if that's who you actually are. But truly, giving an audition that fits the room that you're in and fits your personality, I say it's not a matter of going big, it's a matter of being real and showing who you are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Next question. Whoa. Yeah, Taylor.
So you were talking about how you're on an equity contract. If you, or when you get hired by Disney, do you automatically become equity, or is it like EMC where you earn points towards your card?
Congratulations. The great news is you immediately get your card.
Immediately.
Yeah.
It's also, there's, when you do EMC points, there's a buy-in at a certain point that you have to pay like a chunk fee to equity to become a member. At Disney, it's a smaller fee. And if you get another equity job after that, that's when that clock starts on that paying that big chunk. So I think it was like $125 to join the union versus I think $1,000 if you build up your EMC. But you get it right away. You get it right away, and it's really worth it. Especially in times of crisis. Especially, they're always going to fight for you.
Yeah.
Even if it's individual or the group as a whole.
More questions. Yeah, Mo.
Hi. You mentioned a little bit that there is a theater community outside of just Disney or Universal or anywhere else. Can you talk about that a little bit? Kind of like, as if I were to move there, what else is there going on? Because I'm a junior and I'm considering what to do after college.
Sure. So the Orlando, again, is a fantastic town. Just we're immersed because of the theme parks. There's a whole bunch of creative people on stage and backstage, production, everything. There's a whole bunch of creative people who are paying their bills by day at the theme parks, but then doing what they want to do creatively in the theater community outside of the theme park. So the Orlando Shakespeare Theater is one, Mad Cow Theater, the Orlando Repertory Theater, the Garden Theater. There's also a number of arts organizations that there's Central Florida Community Arts that I do a lot of work with, directing and advising. And so, yeah, and also the Orlando Fringe Festival, which is the largest fringe festival in the country.
Yeah, I think it's it's like the largest here.
But it's the Theater Fringe Festival. So experimental theater, there's a big festival every year that happens, not this year, but there's a big festival that happens every year, the Orlando Fringe Festival. And so the theater community here is great. It's big. And honestly, there are people who are paying their bills through the local theaters, not just necessarily the theme parks.
The stuff that's in Orlando too, because there's stuff that's within driving distance of Orlando that people, or South Florida, North Florida, stuff by the coasts. There's tons of theater opportunity. There's also a Florida Theater Association audition every year too, that you can. Don't forget that Florida, you may have noticed, you may have heard, Florida is a big retirement state. And so a lot of people have moved down here and they've brought their money with them and they love the arts. And so a lot of the retirement communities here, they have a robust theater budget to bring theater in as well as produce their own stuff in town, and they want that professional level of actor and performer and artist to come in. So yeah, there's so much opportunity, not just the theme parks.
And just to build off the idea of Florida and being more than Orlando for students, I think that we have some like Facebook groups for Millikin alums in varying markets. There's one for Florida that's just Central Florida. It's not Orlando because when it was getting put together, the original thought was to just make it Orlando, but we realized that we had this alum network in the Central Florida area that some people were not necessarily in Orlando. But we're doing some work there, or it was a much larger market than we had even initially thought. So to just cast that wide net.
It's kind of odd where we live because yes, we live in Orlando, but it's so huge. Like the Orlando area, Central Florida really is the full aerial work. You could travel within 3 or 4 different counties within a day. I mean, that's in some places where you live, it's not very common, but you could drive, 2 hours one way, 3 hours another way. There's been days
still be in Central Florida.
Yeah, there's been gig days that I've literally done that. I've literally driven, probably 10 hours in my day to get around. So it's kind of expanse, Central Florida.
Awesome.
Next question. Ruth. Oh, Ruth, you're still muted. We can't hear you. No, can't hear you. I'm not sure your mic is working. Okay, we're going to go to somebody else while Ruth figures it out. Who else?
There's one in the chat.
Oh, there's one in the chat. Thank you. From Sydney. For Kate, how do you balance being in a touring a cappella group and singing with Voices of Liberty?
It's a very fine balance. Let me tell you that.
There's many people have that question on all ends. So
it's I luckily have worked for the company for a while, so I have 3 weeks of vacation, which I kind of employed to do those kind of things. I don't really use it for vacation per se, but we have people I have several people in the group that are full-time that I can do switches with. So if I needed like a Friday off because we were singing somewhere, I could switch with somebody and they could take my spot on the other day. So it's a very fine balance.
She has a really good calendar app.
I do have a good calendar app, and there's, it's all marked up with like question marks and, did I ask for time off? And, cause everything's ebbing and flowing until we actually nail the date. So it's like penciling in dates and stuff like that. So
that actually prompts a follow-up question then that I want to ask. How did you figure out how to organize your life in a calendar app? Like something that we talk to students about all the time is the organization of it and the just keeping all of that together. How did you manage that for both of you? Because I mean, Kate with the bouncing thing, Rob with like 12,000 shows.
So honestly, it started out relatively easy because you only start with one show and you only have a responsibility to that one show. And then from there it gets progressively a little bit more complex. We have a shared calendar because we're married, and that's a good thing to do. So we have a shared calendar that I can see what is on her schedule and she can see what is on mine. And we have things that it's all of course color coded. So things that are mine that are optional, those go in blue, and things that are mine that are ours, those have a different color. But I don't know, it's just
you have to just start inputting.
Yeah.
I hated it. I'm a paper gal, but that was the only way we could actually share our lives together, because our lives move so fast, and a gig comes up and you just input it in the calendar before you even have a chance to text each other. It's just a gradual thing. Find an app that works for you. We happen to use something through
WeekCal.
It's called WeekCal. It works with your iCalendar that's on your phone, but it's color coded, and it has like chunks. You can see the chunks, and it's easier visually for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ruth has now submitted her question in writing. Following up about the Orlando market, what is the TV and film scene like in Orlando? I like a lot about what the Florida scene has to offer, but I also have a lot of interest in the TV and film industry and want to get involved there.
The neither of us do television or film regularly. I've done a little bit here and there, and it's all been through word of mouth as far as just a friend recommending me. They needed my specific type and skill set for a thing, and they recommended me, so I did it that way.
We have a lot of friends who do it, though.
We have a lot of friends who do it, and there are talent agencies that work this whole region. So again, Central Florida and the theme parks tend to be people's home base because that's where they can most regularly, continuously pay the bills. But Atlanta is not far away. And that's a giant film and television hub. But also South Florida is also a big film and television hub. And also
voiceovers too is huge.
Yeah,
voiceovers.
Voiceover and studio work
studio singing
is a lot in Orlando. So,
but there's a lot of commercial filming in town, a ton, because there's like Publix, I think it's sort of national chain. They're based in Central Florida, so that they do all their commercials, but they cast them here.
Yeah.
There's several companies that are only based in their home base is Florida, so they'll do national commercials like that.
Again, and I this might be part of it, it might not be, but I think because the theme parks are here, I would exclude myself from this. I know my type, but I think that the film and television agencies, they know they're going to want to be where a lot of attractive people are, and attractive people, we are literally hiring princesses and princes on a regular basis. And so, that's.
And also all the cruise ship commercials are cast here too.
Yeah.
They're cast
here. A lot of industrials too. Yeah.
Who's next? Yeah, Marielle.
Hi. Hello. How are you?
Yeah, you've met Marielle.
I'm friends with you. Hi.
Hi. So I just for some of you, I met some of you I know at the Designing Disney class, Jana and Matt's class, which I believe is happening again in January, right? I heard something about that, January 2021. But I know some of you that way, so I'm excited to talk to some of you again. Hi.
Hello. And
Hi.
Actually, my question was about something that you mentioned when we did meet in person, and it was about the performance upkeep, and you mentioned how there would be people going around performances and they'd be taking notes and stuff. I couldn't remember if that was something that you did, or if that was something that other people did, or if that was something that people do that as well as perform, or if that's pretty much like solely what they do, and like the likelihood of someone getting involved with that if they are working at the parks. Because I thought that was really interesting along with the performance aspect of it.
Yeah. So yes, that is something that I did. So I've worked at Walt Disney World for 19 years. October will be 20 years. And so, but not all of that has been on stage performance. For a while, I worked in what is called the entertainment show quality team. And at the time, there was about 100 choreographers, dancers. I worked in the area of puppetry and maintaining the puppetry of Walt Disney World. But yeah, there's a team of about 100 of us that kept an eye on all the parades and shows, making sure they met the expectations of our guests and our creative team. But yeah, so that's what Marielle is referring to. And so mainly, basically they would watch the shows, watch the parades as they were happening in real time for guests, and then come back and give notes to the cast of what went well and what we can continue to work on and things like that. Very rarely does somebody who is in that position also perform. It's typically somebody who was a performer goes into that position, to maintain it. Every now and then it would be what is referred to as a showdown situation, where they are missing an individual that from the cast that would bring the show down. And so somebody from that team who maybe in a past time performed that role, or they teach it enough to be able to perform it themselves, they would step into it. It's very rare. Yeah.
But there are in every stage a vocal captain.
I'm a vocal captain.
or for his show, he has a dance captain as well.
There's a dance captain.
There's a lead vocal captain and a lead dance captain and a sub vocal captain and sub dance captain that do sit out. Like, he will sit out one show, somebody will come in for that one show, and he will give vocal notes after that show.
Yeah.
So that's how you could perform and still be in kind of, you know, a leadership, you know,
that
show quality ish
yeah.
position.
That is due to the Actors Equity contract.
Gotcha.
Vocal
Kind of like
captain,
dance captain, voice captain, all of this.
Exactly. So all of that is required per the contract, but the company sees that as a value as well. So they have their own team that is outside of the contract altogether. The company values maintenance of the performances, which we appreciate.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next
Good to talk to you again.
Scanning for hands. Yes, please, Sophia.
Hi. So, in going off of what you said about starting off your career kind of in the Orlando area and how your work kind of just kept you there, what would you say are the most important lessons you learned starting out there specifically at Disney as a performer?
Do you want to go?
I'll go. Be nice. Be a kind, good person. Celebrity, and in certain circles, especially her, she in certain circles she is a superstar, and but she didn't. Yes, there's an amount of talent that was needed and necessary. But if that was paired with somebody who was being a jerk all the time, who was being a diva any of the time, who was requiring and that their ego was writing checks that their talent couldn't cash, so as to say, if her talent was coupled with a personality that was not kind and good, her talent would be used for a little bit and then it would be let go. The longevity is based on, I refer to it as the on-stage to green room ratio. We mentioned that a little bit earlier in regard to casting. The on-stage to green room ratio, you want 100% on both. But if somebody can be great on stage and be not so great backstage, but they're great on stage, that's okay. If somebody is not necessarily super great on stage, but they're really awesome backstage, that also is a fine combination. It's when one becomes extreme or the other that it becomes a problem.
You can develop a reputation
really quickly.
And, you know, even if you're super talented, there's some people who just don't get called back because they're just so horrible to work with.
Word has gotten out about them.
Word has gotten out about them. There's gigs that I was booked on just because they knew that I wouldn't be a pain in the butt on them. Not based on, you know, anybody being any less talented than anybody else. So I would agree with being nice and, you know, hey, that you live with these people, you're in the same green room space with these people, you're going to make mistakes. People are going to get in arguments, you know, you're going to disagree, but to just own it and approach the person directly. I spend more time with Voices of Liberty than I do with my own parents.
Or me.
Or Rob. So, you know, it's almost like, you know, you argue and you love and you go through hard times exactly like a family does. So like when you do have hard times or you do make a mistake or you are mean because you're not having a great day, is just owning up, talking about it, apologizing, that kind of thing.
So one thing that I think is really interesting about a group like Voices of Liberty, or a group like Dapper Dans, those are the two in particular for this moment. Some of you know that I spent a very long time in Orlando in January, and one of the things that I did was watch a lot of performances of each of those two groups. And you get an appreciation of how deep the songbooks are. Mm-hmm. Particularly, I was thinking, you know, I noticed the same thing with Dapper Dans, but I happen to remember the Voices of Liberty off the top of my head a little bit more clearly, is that I watched, I think every performance at those days, they were doing 7 shows a day, and maybe 2 or 3 songs would repeat throughout the day, but the rest, it was a completely different set list every time. So how do you keep so much material in your head at all times that you're ready to just launch in?
At first, you don't. I mean, you do, but you don't. Between every set, my first probably 5 years, between every set, I would be in my book. I would be studying the next set. There are things that just you will get right away because you're doing them more frequently. There's some songs that we didn't do very often at all that every single time I would have to just pick up my book and look at it. But I'm also in the camp of, I'm going to memorize something so hard that any distraction is not going to throw me. So when you do a Voices of Liberty chart for the first time on the floor, you can't be kind of sort of memorized. You have to be like so memorized. That helped me, I think, just kind of really doing the reps at home, doing reps in my car, doing that kind of stuff. But you know, there's times and there's moments where you're like, there are a couple of songs that just kind of didn't make it through the transitions between the years of leadership. And there's some songs that like maybe were there for like a year or two that if you paid me $1 million, I couldn't sing them for you because it was such a short-term memory thing. We did them for like a year and then they just really didn't work. So they fell off the book, or they were, you know, cut for various reasons. But yeah, I mean, you just have to really work at it all the time.
Yeah. I think there's also a difference of knowing, learning a song with the understanding you're going to need to sing this for the rest of your life, versus learning a song knowing I need to sing this an hour from now. And I think there's something that happens. You would know better about the learning process, the science behind it. But I think something happens in your brain of knowing that it needs to be put into the long-term files of your brain. So yeah, the other thing is the rehearsal process. The rehearsal process itself is set up, especially in regard to the stage shows, it is set up to have such a repetition that by the time the rehearsal is finished, you'd be hard pressed to not be able to do the show again a year or so later without going over it. Does that make sense?
For like Hoop?
For Hoop, yeah. For Finding Nemo the musical, I always have butterflies on my way to Finding Nemo the musical, because I just do it so rarely. I always have a little bit of butterflies about it. Like, do I remember this? And I'm going over it in my head, and I went over it the day before and everything. I'm like, oh, I think I got this. I'm working at it, but I think I got this. And as soon as I put the costume on, my body goes, you've got this. You know this, because the rehearsal process was so specific in its repetition that you don't really have a choice.
Also, speaking to Dapper Dans and Voices of Liberty, you don't learn 50 songs in the first rehearsal process.
No, it's a lot.
That helps.
It's a lot right away. Dapper Dans has a songbook of about 22 to 25 songs.
Yeah, we memorize 24 songs within the rehearsal period. So there's 2 weeks for voices. And the first day, obviously, you don't have anything due. But then the next day, you have to have something memorized. Every other day beyond that, and it's 2 or 3 songs that you will have gone through a ton, but you have to take the time at night to just kind of work on it your own, and that kind of stuff. So you don't learn the whole book within the one rehearsal period. And then it's gradual. Every week, you tack on new songs.
Good.
That helps.
Questions? I see Mel, and then I'll go to Mo again.
Okay, this is like kind of a weird question, but you guys are in some like pretty well-known groups, especially for people who are big fans of the parks. How do you kind of deal with that like fandom coming to like these performances and things like that?
Thank you, Mel. Now I'm taking notes.
So I think it's, I'll tell this story sometimes that for Kate, it was just, she didn't know about Voices of Liberty before she auditioned, right? And she auditioned in New York and did not know about Voices of Liberty and what it was and the following that it had. It was just the next gig for her. And when she showed up, there was a little bit of it was a little bit jarring for her that people already knew her name before she even stepped on stage. People in the audience knew who she was because word had traveled. Did you hear there's a new soprano? There's a new soprano coming. Did you hear? We think her name is Kate. Her name is Kate? Yeah, I think Kate. Yeah. And they all looked her up and they found out everything that they could so that when she stepped on stage, they could go, Kate, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you as an audience member. And so that is a little bit jarring sometimes when people know you, even though you haven't really had a conversation with them. I am very public on social media about who I am and what I do. Kate is not as public. And so for me, I understand when people come up to me and they know things about my personal life. For the most part, it hasn't been an issue. But as far as, it was lovely. The other day, I was out for a run because I'm trying to maintain my cardio while I'm away from the show. And I was out for a run, and from across the street, somebody shouted out, yeah, man, keep running. When Hoop Dee Doo reopens, we need you to be ready. And that was somebody that I do not know who they are, but they just shouted it out from across the street. And it was, I honestly, I've said this, I may have cried a little bit just because you don't know who's paying attention to you. So as far as dealing with it,
it's a little weird at first because you're just a normal person. But people are really usually nice and normal. Yeah. I mean, they want to get a picture with you. They want to talk to you. They want to tell you how much they enjoyed it, or if they met you. Like I have kids since I've been there for about 10 years now. I have kids that are almost grown that were like, you took a picture with me when I was 5. Can we get a picture now? So it's
people they come with their whole, here's our vacation, 2007, 2008, 2009.
Which was really fun. I stopped accepting friends on Facebook that I had not met in person. Once I joined Voices of Liberty, that was a rule I set for myself.
It's good.
But like if I've met people, then yeah, you can be my friend on Facebook. We've actually physically met. But there's certain boundaries that I have with, random guests that I don't know anything about.
I will say the company is very they're very protective and understanding of their cast members. And so it is always within our right to be able to step away from a conversation, step out of a situation, go backstage into our safe space. And if things get weird, we have a way out. So I never get a sense, I never feel unsafe. I never feel encroached upon too much because I know that I have a way out.
But there are people that come up and hug you and know your name. Yeah. But that you've never met before, which is, very sweet and kind of odd at the same time. But it's not as bad. I mean, I learned to actually have a fan page on Facebook and use my Instagram as a connect for that fan page and post things like, hey, if people really want to know about me, like I'm happy to do that. But, they don't need to know where I checked in to go to the theater, last week or whatever.
That's me. I need them to know that about me for whatever reason.
Mo, what was your question?
Yeah. Hi. I was wondering how you balance working at multiple theme parks. Kind of like, how did that happen? And then how do you now balance it?
So for me, it's my contract and my stage is the Hoop Dee Doo Revue. But I'm only responsible for 3 nights a week there. That's what my contract has. So I have 4 days a week that I am fully available to other places. It is my responsibility to maintain that calendar and maintain that schedule. And really it's, in this day and age, it's just really relatively easy. Before another schedule comes out, there's typically a reminder email that comes out, hey, update your availability for the coming month as we're putting together the schedule. And when if something is on my calendar, it is on my calendar and I leave it there in terms of work. So I'm not the guy, I know a lot of people who will shuffle things around continuously so that they can do all the things all the time and be the hero to every stage all the time. For me, when the phone rings, say I'm scheduled at Hoop Dee Doo, and the phone rings, Rob, can you come in for Finding Nemo today? I will say, yes, I am available until 3 o'clock. And it is going to be on overtime because you're calling me day of. So I will alert them to those things and let them make that decision. But what I won't do is try to call Hoop Dee Doo and say, hey, Finding Nemo needs me. Can you find somebody to cover me there tonight? I won't do that. So it really is just a matter. I keep it pretty easy. If it's on my calendar, it stays on my calendar. If the rule for me is the answer is always yes, unless it has to be no. So if you call me and want me to work for you or work with you, if I'm available, the answer is yes. If I'm not available, then the answer has to be no.
And that's a good rule to set for yourself too, is whatever the first person who asks you, that's the gig that you should honor.
Don't let it get into a game of who pays more, anything like that.
I mean, of course, for for Voctave things, I will have asked off from work beforehand. So that it's approved. But there are some people who will be like, oh, I can't do your gig anymore because
a better
paying gig came up. That's a way to make enemies. So even if you're, another gig comes along, you're like, what a bummer. I'm not available.
But you'll build and maintain credibility and reliability that way, which is much better in the long term than being the guy who, well, I can book them, but if a better gig comes along, they'll drop out. So I don't want to even call them in the first place.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more. We're coming up at the end of our hour. So anybody else? Yes, Audrey.
Hi. So I'm currently studying stage management at Millikin, and I'm graduating in December. And so I've been exploring just the application process, especially for Disney World and Disney Cruise Line. And as a company like Disney, I'm sure they get thousands of applications a week. And I'm just wondering how, do you have advice how to make a certain cover letter or a resume or even an interview stand out amongst all the other applications that Disney might get?
I will say actually having stage management experience is going to make you leaps and bounds above other people. At Walt Disney World, I don't know how it works on the cruise line, but at World, managers are people who manage people, but they also are stage managers. It's kind of like one entertainment managers is kind of one lump thing. So there are some managers who never call shows. They don't know how to run a rehearsal process. They don't know how to do those kind of things. They just are literally like a manager would be at any kind of business, at a retail establishment per se. But actually having stage management experience is going to be great for you. That's going to get you on the top of some piles, I would think.
Yeah, across the board. And I am when I say this, I understand for those of you more shrewd listeners, you might jump back in my story and you'll go, wait a second, that wasn't necessarily true of you. And that is that, yes, I was hired right out of high school, but I had a specific skill that they were looking for at that specific time, of puppetry specifically. So that was something that I had, and I got brought in pretty early on, and then I had a natural ability, and they were able to get me up to speed on the way that we do it here. That said, it is very often said across the board for Walt Disney World that we are not a training ground. We are not a place that you come and learn how to do this and then go off and do it someplace else more professionally. Because of the theme park, what is the word I'm looking for? The way that theme parks sometimes are viewed, we are put into the same category as Six Flags, which I love Six Flags, but at the same time, it's a summer job. It's not an all-the-time career. Disney is an all-the-time career. So they're not looking to bring people in who are just looking for something fun to do on the weekends. They want somebody who knows how to do it. So as Kate said, the boots on the ground, honest to goodness, real deal experience is what is going to set you apart. And right now that might seem a little daunting where you're going, hey, wait a second, I don't have an opportunity yet for experience, but you do. And I would say yes to everything, take all the experience that you possibly can. Doesn't matter where it is and who's doing it. Any opportunity you have to stage manage or be around stage management and point to that. And that's really anywhere at Walt Disney World. They're going to be looking for people who have the actual experience.
Thank you.
One more question, perhaps? Scanning. Anybody else? Yeah, Mackenzie, I figured you would probably have one more.
So with your like multiple shows that you guys are in, is that something that once you're in one show, you have to like, do you have to like re-audition every year, or do you have to audition for each additional show that you're in? How does that work? Are you asked to do it? Like, how does that work?
It's a little bit of all of that, except once you learn the show, you don't have to re-audition for it.
At Walt Disney World.
At Walt Disney World. Other parks, that is not the case.
At Universal, they'll have, instead of having like contract re-upping, they will have like a show us an audition that shows us that you've maintained your skill.
Yeah.
Kind of audition. But it's not really an audition. It's just to make sure that you're, you know, staying relevant, I guess.
Yeah. But Walt Disney World, you do have to, it's a little bit of all of that, where you do have to re-audition. I'm sorry, you do have to audition for the shows that you want to be a part of. Sometimes it's kind of a tiered effect, where they will say, yes, come to the open call audition, even though we know you, even though you perform for us already, come to the open call audition and show us something different or show us what you're interested in. Sometimes, depending on the situation, depending on your relationships with people, you can send an email saying, I'm really interested in this role, and they could say, we agree, you might be good for that role, go ahead and just come to the callbacks. On the rare occasion, it's happened just a handful of times, that you get the call that you've been cast into a role to learn a show, without auditioning, without calling back. But that is typically because they used a previous audition or callback as reference to this upcoming thing.
They also have these profiles online that they keep of you, and you can add things to them as well.
I need to update mine. That's a good reminder.
So you update your headshot, you update, and you, as auditioning, you will do this yourself. You can always update that and always add to it, so that they'll just do like a keyword search or a special skill search or something like that. And then they'll see, these are the people who already work for us, who already have the skill set. A lot of times it'll be for a special event kind of situation. That's just a limited time, you know, a couple of weeks, like a week of rehearsal or a week and a half of rehearsal and a one-day event kind of thing.
They don't need to audition. They don't have time for auditioning.
They'll just cast you.
Yeah.
If your stage will let you go. That's part of it too. If your stage says, no, we can't possibly let Rob as 6-bits go for this time period, then
there it is.
You are at your stage.
Well, that takes us to an hour. Sort of to conclude things, I will say that both of these two individuals have been nothing but kind and generous to Millikin, to me, and now to you. I am exceptionally grateful to you, Kate, and you, Rob, for joining us today and for everything that you have done for us over the years. It means more than you will know. And for sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us today. It's also just really good to see both of you. If you are watching this, please go listen to Voctave, go subscribe to the Leading Creative podcast. And you can find videos of both of these nice people performing on YouTube. Go for it. Students, it's been great to see you. And thanks, everybody. Kate and Rob, anything to wrap us up?
Only, if you want to, if there was anything you want to do a follow-up on, you can always find me on Twitter and Instagram at Rob Lott. Feel free to shoot me a DM there.
Find me on Instagram at
the Kate Lott. That is Rob A. Lott, 1B, 2 T's, and the Kate Lott is the Kate Lott with 2 T's.
All right. And a bunch of people are sending chat messages saying thank you very much.
I just want to tag on to the end of this.
Oh, yeah, Jana.
Rob mentioned Matt and I are teaching the design Disney class again. Rob is one of our friends that we have made through that class. So much so that people say, oh, Rob, you went to Millikin. So anyway, if any of you are interested, Matt and I will be having an informational meeting about that coming up in the next month. So
I always have such a great time when you guys are in town, and
we have a great time with Rob. So and you know, we'll see Kate's show for sure. So All right, thanks, guys.
Goodbye, everybody. Be well.